The air in courtroom 403 was thick with tension, everyone's eyes fixed on the front as a disheveled woman in a chic business suit was forcefully led in by a uniformed officer. "Your Honor, I apologize for the disturbance," the officer announced, his voice booming across the silent room, but this lady refused to cooperate and identify herself outside. The judge, an elderly man with a stern gaze, peered over his glasses. "Madam, would you care to explain your presence here and why you resisted my officer?" The room held its breath as the woman straightened her jacket, her voice calm yet commanding. "Your Honor, I'm here on official business from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and as for resisting, I believe the officer has made a grave mistake in identity." A murmur rippled through the spectators as the judge's face turned from curiosity to shock. "And what might your position be at the U.S. Attorney's Office?" he asked, a hint of disbelief in his tone. "I am the chief federal prosecutor for this district," she declared, her eyes locking with the officers, who suddenly seemed much smaller under her gaze. The courtroom erupted into chaos, the judge banging his gavel for order. As the echoes of the wood hitting the block faded, everyone was left wondering how a routine check outside a courthouse could have spiraled into a potential legal nightmare. As the noise died down, let's rewind a few weeks to understand how a simple mistake could lead to one of the most unexpected courtroom dramas of the year. 3 weeks earlier, Elaine Mercer, the chief federal prosecutor, was in her office deep into the night, her desk lamp the only light amidst the darkness, casting long shadows on the walls filled with law books and framed legal accolades. Elaine, a seasoned prosecutor known for her meticulous nature and no-nonsense attitude, was preparing for a high-profile case that had caught the media's attention. It involved a large corporation accused of environmental violations that could impact thousands of residents in her jurisdiction. Meanwhile, across town, Officer Jake Harmon was finishing his shift. Known for his diligence and somewhat overzealous nature, Jake was the kind of officer who took no chances, especially in a district that had seen its fair share of troubles. As he drove through the quiet streets, he reviewed the day's briefings, which included a note about heightened security due to recent threats against local judges and federal officers. The next morning, Elaine decided to take a walk to clear her mind before heading to the courthouse. Dressed in her usual sharp suit, she blended in with the early crowd of citygoers, her thoughts preoccupied with her case. At the same time, Jake was stationed outside the courthouse, his eyes scanning the crowd for any potential threats. As fate would have it, their paths crossed under the most improbable circumstances. Elaine, lost in her thoughts, accidentally bumped into Jake, spilling his coffee. Flustered and apologetic, she quickly tried to move past him, not noticing the badge that indicated he was on duty. Jake, already on high alert, misread her hurried apology as an attempt to flee. "Ma'am, please stop and identify yourself," he called out, his hand instinctively going to his radio. Elaine, startled and somewhat irritated by the interruption, responded curtly, "I'm in a hurry, officer. Please excuse me." Her dismissive tone only raised Jake's suspicions further. "Ma'am, I need you to stay and show some ID," Jake insisted, his voice firm. This misunderstanding set the stage for the dramatic courtroom confrontation that would soon unfold. How did a simple morning walk lead to a showdown in court? What was going through Jake's mind as he faced the chief federal prosecutor in such an unexpected arena? Back in the courtroom, the judge demanded silence, his gavel poised to strike again if needed. "Officer Harmon, please explain the circumstances that led you to bring Ms. Mercer here today," he said sternly, his eyes narrowing slightly as he addressed the young officer. Jake stood, his posture rigid, the courtroom's eyes burning into him. "Your Honor, I was performing my duties outside the courthouse when Ms. Mercer collided with me and then attempted to leave the scene without proper identification. Given the recent threats, I was compelled to ensure she was not a potential threat to the safety of this court." The judge turned his attention to Elaine, who now seemed more composed, though her initial irritation was palpable. "Ms. Mercer, is there a reason you refused to identify yourself to Officer Harmon?" Elaine's reply was measured. "Your Honor, I was late for a pre-trial meeting and did not realize Officer Harmon was asking for my credentials in his capacity as a police officer. I thought it was a simple mishap, and I was in a hurry." The judge nodded, understanding the high-pressure environment they all worked in but remained puzzled by the escalation. "This is indeed a serious misunderstanding," he concluded. "Officer Harmon, while I appreciate your vigilance, it's crucial to assess situations with a clear mind and avoid assumptions that could lead to such drastic measures." As the judge proposed a recess to sort out the formalities and apologize formally to Elaine, The courtroom buzzed with whispered discussions about the implications of the incident. Legal professionals and journalists alike realized this was a story that highlighted deeper issues within the system: the balance between security and civility, the snap judgments made under pressure, and the repercussions they could have. Outside the courthouse, as Elaine walked to get some fresh air, she reflected on the incident. Despite her initial outrage, she understood the pressures law enforcement faced, but she also recognized the need for better communication and protocols to prevent such errors. This experience, though unpleasant, provided a unique opportunity to address these issues at a higher level. Meanwhile, Jake, feeling both embarrassed and enlightened, knew he had to make amends but also learn from this mistake. How would both parties move forward from this? Could this incident spark a change in procedures or even in personal growth? What are your thoughts on this situation? Have you witnessed or experienced a similar misunderstanding? Let us know in the comments below where you're watching from and share your stories. In the days following the courtroom incident, Elaine Mercer found herself at the center of a media whirlwind. Her phone was inundated with calls from reporters seeking her comment on the event, and her email overflowed with invitations to speak on panels about civil rights and law enforcement practices. While she was accustomed to the spotlight due to her high-profile job, this was different. This was personal. Elaine took a moment to reflect on the situation. She knew that her response could either escalate tensions or open a dialogue for improvement between the justice system and the community it served. Deciding on the latter, she scheduled a press conference to address the issue publicly. At the press conference, Elaine stood before a room packed with journalists, her stance confident yet open. "This incident," she began, "highlights a crucial issue within our justice system: the need for balance between security and respect for individual rights. I respect Officer Harmon's dedication to his duty, but this situation could have been handled differently." Meanwhile, Officer Jake Harmon had been doing some soul-searching of his own. The incident had shaken him, making him question his approach to law enforcement. He reached out to his superiors about receiving additional training in conflict resolution and cultural awareness, hoping to avoid future misunderstandings. His initiative was well received, and soon, a department-wide training was scheduled, using his encounter with Elaine as a case study. As Elaine's speech continued, she proposed a new partnership between her office and local law enforcement to develop training programs that would focus on communication skills, legal awareness, and cultural sensitivity. "It is only through cooperation and understanding that we can ensure justice is truly served," she concluded, her message resonating with many who had seen the all-too-common escalations in similar scenarios. In the audience, a young law student named Maria Vasquez was moved by Elaine's words. She had experienced racial profiling firsthand and had chosen to pursue law to make a difference. Inspired by Elaine's call to action, Maria approached her after the conference with an idea for a community outreach program. Her initiative aimed to educate young people about their rights and responsibilities when interacting with law enforcement. Elaine was impressed by Maria's enthusiasm and insight. "Why don't we discuss this further over coffee?" she suggested. "I think you have the makings of a great leader, and I would love to support your project." As they left the conference room together, plans for change were already brewing. The incident in the courthouse had sparked a movement, and for Elaine and Jake, it was the beginning of a significant transformation in their professional lives and beyond. Following the press conference, the community response was overwhelmingly positive. Local news outlets praised Elaine and Jake's willingness to turn a regrettable incident into a catalyst for constructive dialogue and reform. The story of their encounter spread far beyond the local area, sparking discussions on national platforms about the broader implications for justice and community relations. Elaine and Maria's first meeting over coffee blossomed into a robust action plan for their community outreach program. They decided to name it Bridges, symbolizing their goal to build connections between law enforcement and the community. The program would feature workshops, seminars, and interactive role-playing scenarios designed to foster understanding and respect on both sides. Meanwhile, Jake attended his first session of the new training program introduced by his department. He found himself deeply engaged, particularly in a workshop where officers were asked to role-play as civilians being approached by police. This role reversal was eye-opening for Jake, allowing him to experience the anxiety and confusion a civilian might feel during such encounters. This perspective shift was crucial for him, reinforcing the importance of empathy in his duties. As these initiatives began to take shape, the community took notice. Local community leaders, who had been skeptical at first, started to endorse the program, encouraging participation among their constituents. schools expressed interest in incorporating the Bridges program into their curriculum, aiming to educate students early about the dynamics of police interactions. Amid this progress, Elaine received an invitation to speak at a national conference on criminal justice reform, where she would share the success story of their local efforts. As she prepared her speech, she realized the potential impact of scaling such programs nationwide, potentially influencing policy at the highest levels. As the date of the National Criminal Justice Reform Conference approached, Elaine felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She knew her presentation could potentially influence other communities and law enforcement agencies across the country to adopt similar initiatives like Bridges. The success of her talk would be crucial in garnering wider support and funding for these kinds of programs. Meanwhile, back in her hometown, Maria was busy organizing a Bridges event that would coincide with Elaine's conference presentation. The event was designed to demonstrate the program's impact to the community and media, showcasing live demonstrations of the training and interactive sessions between police and civilians. On the day of the conference, Elaine stood backstage, reviewing her notes one last time. The auditorium was packed with law enforcement officials, policymakers, activists, and academics from around the country, all eager to hear about innovative approaches to criminal justice reform. When Elaine was introduced, she walked onto the stage to a warm reception. She began by recounting the incident with Officer Jake Harmon, not sparing details about the tension and the subsequent realization that both parties had an opportunity to learn and grow from the experience. Today, I want to share with you not just a story of conflict, but one of transformation and hope, Elaine said, clicking to a slide showing photos from various Bridges workshops. This program has not only changed the dynamics of police-citizen interactions in our community, but has also fostered a deeper, mutual understanding. She continued by discussing the specific outcomes of the program: decreased complaints against police, improved community relations, and positive feedback from both officers and civilians. The audience listened intently, many taking notes or nodding in agreement. As Elaine concluded her talk, she invited the audience to view a live stream of the Bridges event happening back in her city. The screen behind her lit up with images of police officers and young students engaged in discussions, officers participating in role-play exercises, and community leaders speaking about the positive changes they had witnessed. The applause at the end of her presentation was thunderous. Many attendees approached Elaine afterward, eager to learn more about how they could implement similar programs in their jurisdictions. Contacts were exchanged, and promises to visit her city to see Bridges in action were made. Inspired by the overwhelming positive response, Elaine felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path forward was clear. She would work to expand Bridges nationally, transforming it from a local initiative into a model for national reform. Elaine returned from the conference with a mixture of elation and determination. The positive reception at the national level had given her both the validation and the challenge she needed to expand Bridges beyond her local community. She was aware that scaling the initiative would require careful planning, robust funding, and strategic partnerships. Back at the office, Elaine convened a meeting with her team and Maria to discuss the next steps. They laid out a plan to form a non-profit organization that would oversee the expansion of Bridges, ensuring that the program's core values and effectiveness were maintained even as it grew. The team decided to pilot Bridges in 3 different cities with varying demographics and challenges. Each location would provide valuable insights into how the program might need to be adapted to meet diverse community needs. To manage this, Elaine sought partnerships with local universities, law enforcement agencies, and community organizations in each pilot city. Meanwhile, Jake, who had been an instrumental part of the program's success, was appointed as a liaison officer. He would travel to the pilot cities, sharing his experiences and helping train local officers and facilitators. His first-hand account and commitment to change were powerful tools in persuading others to embrace the program. As the plans took shape, challenges inevitably arose. Funding was a major hurdle, despite the initial enthusiasm. Elaine and her team spent countless hours applying for grants, pitching to potential donors, and organizing fundraising events. The bureaucratic red tape in different cities also posed a problem, delaying the launch of the pilot programs. To maintain momentum and public interest, Maria suggested launching a digital campaign featuring stories from individuals impacted by Bridges. The campaign would include testimonials from police officers, community members, and footage from training sessions and workshops. This approach not only kept the community engaged, but also attracted the attention of larger donors and non-profit networks interested in supporting criminal justice reform. As the pilot programs finally launched, the initial feedback was mixed. In one city, the program was met with enthusiasm and quick adoption. In another, skepticism from veteran officers posed a significant barrier, requiring additional sessions focused on addressing their concerns and demonstrating the program's benefits. Through these ups and downs, Elaine remained committed to her vision. She knew that change was a slow process and that setbacks were part of the journey. With each challenge, the team adapted and learned, refining their strategies to better meet the needs of the communities they served. As Bridges expanded into new cities, Elaine and her team faced a complex mosaic of responses that reflected the diverse nature of America's communities. Each city brought its own set of challenges and successes, providing Elaine with a deeper understanding of the nuanced landscape of criminal justice reform across different regions. In one of the pilot cities, a mid-sized town in the Midwest, the program was initially met with resistance from a faction within the local police department. Some veteran officers were skeptical of what they perceived as an imposition on their established methods. However, Jake's role as a liaison became crucial here. His personal stories and experiences helped bridge the gap. He conducted joint sessions where he shared his own journey of transformation, gradually winning over many of his toughest critics. Meanwhile, in a larger city on the East Coast, the program flourished quickly, thanks in part to a progressive police chief who had been advocating for similar reforms. Here, Bridges was embraced as a vital tool for building community trust, with officers and civilians alike participating enthusiastically in workshops and discussions. Despite these varied experiences, the digital campaign that Maria had suggested proved to be a unifying force. It connected participants from different cities, allowing them to share their experiences and learn from each other. The testimonials from these diverse voices created a powerful narrative that attracted national attention, bringing in new funding and support from major philanthropic organizations. Elaine, seeing the potential to leverage this momentum, organized a national Bridges conference, inviting representatives from all participating cities to come together, share insights, and forge a collective path forward. The conference included panels, workshops, and keynote speeches by prominent figures in law enforcement, academia, and civil rights advocacy. One of the highlights of the conference was a panel discussion featuring young adults from the community outreach programs. They shared poignant stories about how Bridges had impacted their perceptions of police and their own roles within the community. Their stories, full of hope and renewed trust, were met with applause and admiration from an audience that included their own local officers. As the conference wrapped up, Elaine felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges were daunting, but the successes and testimonials spoke volumes about the potential impact of Bridges. Inspired by the conference, several more cities signed up to pilot the program, eager to bring about change in their own communities. The journey of Bridges was becoming a story not just of reform, but of transformation and hope, a narrative that Elaine hoped would continue to inspire and evolve. As Bridges gained traction nationally, the broader implications for policy and public perception began to materialize. Elaine was invited to testify before Congress about the program's success and its potential as a model for national police reform. This was a pivotal moment, not just for Bridges, but for the future of criminal justice in the United States. In her testimony, Elaine laid out the statistics from the pilot cities. Incidents of police violence had decreased, community trust metrics were on the rise, and complaints against officers had dropped significantly. She presented compelling testimonials from community members and law enforcement officers who had seen the program's positive impact firsthand. Elaine's presentation was met with interest and some skepticism by lawmakers, some of whom were concerned about the cost and scalability of implementing Bridges nationally. However, the persuasive evidence and the emotional weight of the testimonials made a strong case, leading to discussions about federal funding for expanding the program. Back in the pilot cities, the local Bridges teams were busy implementing lessons learned from the national conference. They refined their training modules and community engagement strategies, focusing on sustainability and deeper impact. In each city, a Bridges Council was established, consisting of police officers, community leaders, and civilians, who would oversee the program's ongoing activities and foster continuous dialogue. Jake, who had grown immensely through his involvement with Bridges, was now a prominent advocate for the program, speaking at various national and local forums about the importance of empathy and understanding in policing. His personal growth and commitment were highlighted in several media stories, serving as a powerful narrative for the program's transformative potential. Meanwhile, Maria's digital campaign had evolved into a robust online platform where communities from across the country could share resources, training materials, and success stories. This platform not only facilitated a nationwide network of bridges advocates but also served as a vital tool for transparency and accountability. As bridges continued to evolve, so did the communities it touched. Stories of reconciliation and cooperation replaced narratives of conflict and mistrust, painting a hopeful picture of the future. The culmination of Elaine's tireless advocacy and the demonstrable success of bridges across its pilot cities reached a significant milestone. After months of deliberations following her testimony, Congress passed legislation to fund the expansion of community police engagement programs, with bridges cited as a model framework. This legislative victory marked a monumental step in national criminal justice reform, reflecting a shift towards more empathetic and community-focused policing. Elaine, overwhelmed by the achievement, knew that the real work was just beginning. With federal funding secured, bridges could now be implemented in every state, adapting to the specific needs and challenges of diverse communities across America. The potential for transformative change was immense, and Elaine was ready to lead this new phase. The national rollout began with a series of training symposiums for law enforcement agencies and community leaders, conducted by Elaine's team alongside experienced facilitators like Jake, who had become a symbol of positive change within the police force. These symposiums focused on mutual respect, communication skills, and crisis de-escalation techniques, aiming to foster a nationwide culture of understanding and cooperation between police and the communities they serve. Meanwhile, Maria's online platform turned into a vibrant hub for exchanging ideas and best practices, now enriched with data and stories from the expanding network of Bridges programs. It also featured a monitoring tool that tracked the progress of each community, offering real-time feedback and support to ensure the success of the initiative. As Bridges was implemented across the country, early results showed promising trends: a decline in civilian complaints against police, an increase in community cooperation during investigations, and more importantly, a rise in public trust towards law enforcement. News outlets began covering these positive developments, highlighting stories of communities that had turned from sites of tension to examples of collaboration. In recognition of her efforts, Elaine was awarded several national accolades, including a prestigious humanitarian award. During her acceptance speech, she reflected on the journey of Bridges from a local initiative to a national movement. "This honor is not mine alone," she declared, "but belongs to every officer, every community leader, and every citizen who believed that change was possible and worked tirelessly to achieve it." As the story of Bridges concludes, the narrative of Elaine, Jake, Maria, and countless others stands as a testament to the power of perseverance, dialogue, and the shared desire for a more just and respectful society. Thank you for following this story. If it inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share this video to help spread the message of positive change. What part of this journey resonated with you the most? How can we all contribute to building stronger, safer, and more united communities? Share your thoughts and join the conversation. Remember, every step towards understanding and cooperation makes a difference. Stay tuned for more stories like this, and continue to be a part of the change we all wish to see in the world.